Welcome to Heredity and Pedigrees. I'm Hampton Hand, an inspiring geneticist here to help you build an understanding of genetic inheritance through the use of a pedigree. Now, what is a pedigree? And no, we aren't talking about the dog food brain, but a pedigree in genetics. A pedigree is a technique used by geneticists to determine patterns of human inheritance, exemplifying if a trait is present or absent in an individual. Specifically, the pedigree is a pictorial representation of a family history that outlines the inheritance of one or more characteristics. While the pedigree may not be the most scientific image you have ever seen, you will be surprised with how these squares and circles can reveal about inheritance. So why squares, why circles, why shaded, unshaded, and what is the point? Circles and squares represent gender. Women are circles and males are squares. When one of these symbols is shaded, that means that they have the trait. Unshaded means the trait is absent. Individuals have a straight line between them if they are mates, and a line coming down from the mating pair to identify a child. Generations are labeled through Roman numerals, and each individual is labeled with a number. Who would have thought something so simple could be so complicated? So how do we determine what's what? Geneticists just don't color random boxes. Well, traits are defined as either dominant or recessive. Dominant traits are phenotypically always expressed over recessive, and a recessive is only expressed if the dominant is absent. Also know traits can be autosomal or sex-linked. Autosomal traits are located on an autosome, meaning the first 22 chromosomes of karyotype, and sex-linked are located on the X or Y. Therefore, they're X-linked or Y-linked. So now that we know this information, there are 5 types: autosomal dominant, autosomal recessive, X-linked recessive, X-linked dominant, and Y-linked. When a trait is autosomal dominant, the normal allele is recessive and the abnormal allele is dominant. You can identify if there's an autosomal dominant disorder because the phenotype will most likely appear in every generation of the pedigree. Next, autosomal recessive. Traits occur only when 2 recessive alleles are present on the genotype. This means if you are homozygous recessive, you are affected. X-linked recessive traits occur when you have a recessive allele on the X chromosome. Same for X-linked dominant. You have a dominant allele on the X chromosome. Lastly, Y-linked, meaning that it can only pass from male to male. See example. Percy Jackson is a demigod. He is the son of Poseidon and his mortal mother, Sally Jackson. Percy Jackson is genetically very different in comparison to his fellow family members, partially because he is half Greek god and half mortal. As stated in the book, Percy Jackson has dyslexia because he is hardwired to read ancient Greek and has inborn battle reflexes. So let's investigate. Looking at the pedigree, this trait is not autosomal dominant. This is because Sally has dyslexia and her parents do not. It is evident that Jim and Estelle are both carriers of the trait because they do not display the trait dyslexia, but Sally does. If the trait were to be dominant, the parents and Sally would have it. So let's try again. Autosomal recessive. I think this one works. As shown in the pedigree, not many individuals have the trait, and it is only really apparent in the second and third generations of the pedigree. This means that the parents of Poseidon and Sally don't have dyslexia. However, Sally has dyslexia along with Percy Jackson. This means that Poseidon must be a carrier. Moving right along, the trait is not X-linked dominant. When a trait is X-linked dominant, the individual with the trait would have to have a genotype with a capital D. However, Jim and Estelle are both recessive, meaning that Sally can't be dominant. So X-linked recessive, nope. This mode of inheritance is not applicable because the mother and father of Sally are dominant and she would be recessive. Lastly, Y-linked. Right off the bat, we know this is incorrect because all males would have the trait. Poseidon doesn't, Sally does. And that's a wrap. Dyslexia is autosomal recessive in this case. Thank you for watching Heredity and Pedigrees with Hampton Hand, and a huge shout out to the following references.